Hi, this is Kerry Artak with Wicked Stocks, bringing you your weekly Bitcoin analysis for the week of Monday, April 13th, 2026. I like to start with the big picture and kind of backtrack just a little bit to see where we've come from after closing above this 87,940 formation back in November of 24. We then rallied up to the next long-term resistance, this full wave count, taking the 22 high and the 21 high, subtract from it the 22 low, and then adding it back to the 21 high. I call it the full swing. It is a balance the market has achieved when it reaches it, and an exhaustion point, which obviously was the case here back from July of 25 to the last test was October of 25, and we collapsed back to this channel top at 87,940. We also collapsed back to this rising channel bottom, which did hold on that first attempt back in November of 25. And then it was in January of this year that we closed below not only this significant three-year channel bottom that's rising now at 91,460, but also that channel top at 87,000 and change that I mentioned before. So this double sell signal was a meaningful event. And you can obviously see how the market followed through on that. Even a week later, we gapped lower and continued south to that Feb 26 low of around 60,190. We've been in a congestive framework now for the last couple of months. Let's move on to the next chart. The way I see this shaping up now, through the second quarter, through the third quarter, is a base of support. And this is actually more significant a support than 91,461 was. This three-year channel bottom at 91,461. The 60,569 is an 8-9-year structure that can absorb selling not only for the year, but possibly through the rest of the decade. We could round up from here nicely. So the low 60s, significant long-term support for Bitcoin, may contain selling not only for the rest of the year, but through the rest of the decade. It is backed up by a rising long-term two-thirds speed line. That is at 59,151. That is a two-thirds speed line projected off that 22 low. And so this is a range that can absorb selling for the year. From here, we can round up within 3 to 5 months, guessing on that timing, back into the low 90,000 region, which becomes the low 100,000 region by August. So by August, 3 to 5 months, we could find ourselves in the low 100,000 area again. I could also draw Fibonacci levels, which I'm not committing to just yet. That would be, you've got the 5/8 at 101, right? So your 5/8 Fibonacci from the extremes over the last year or so is in the 101 handle. And so this rising channel bottom converges with all that in August. So, that's just kind of those are little things that we look at. And I'll just leave it at that for right now, because right now we've yet to actually push through a midterm resistance, which is at 74,412. And it's preceded by 73,791. And this is an area that is nothing more than the March 24 high, and you've got this pullback low of April of 25. And so this narrow zone has actually been holding buying pressures pretty well for the last month and a half. And below 74,412, we can quite easily fall back into the low 60,000 region over the next 3 to 5 weeks, potentially, where we could bottom out, as I say, through the rest of the year and even perhaps through the rest of the decade. Closing above 74,412, you can expect a bullish continuation into the low 90,000 region, once again in the low 100,000 region by August, and that would be the objective. We've yet to actually test 60,569, and I will say that once, or if we do, I will begin calling this 91,461 an outright objective. I don't yet because we really haven't tested it. And if we don't test it, and if we do close above 74,412, then I will shift to 91,461 as a realistic 2 to 3 month target, which over the next few months will push into the mid to upper 90s, et cetera, et cetera. And we'll be watching this as an area to take profits on a long position you may have established above 74,412. But I think it's a little early to go long a Bitcoin. If your time horizon is, say, 2 to 3 months out, you're either A, waiting for bottom picking opportunities in the low 60,000 area, or B, you're pulling the trigger with a settlement this week above 74,412. Now, last thing I'm going to say about all this is if we do happen to close below 59,151. That's not going to happen this week, and I actually am not expecting that even over the next few months. But if it does occur, that is your cue to exit Bitcoin, I think, long term. And if you can play the short side by, I don't know, buying out of the money puts in some of the Bitcoin ETFs, you can play the 15,000 to 20,000 region as our next long-term objective, because I think that would be realistic if we were to close below 59,151. But we're not going to see that this week, and we may not see it for the rest of the year if we happen to close this week above 74,412. I'm going to leave it at that for this week's Bitcoin analysis. You have a great week.